What's going on Twitch and YouTube? Welcome to episode 41 of the U.S.S. CERRITOS tutorial. I'm Zerolene. I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today we got about a 38-minute video. I know it's showing we got about an hour and 18 minutes, but this is going to be a long one. If you're with me tonight on the live stream, I'm going to be momentarily stopping this for about 10 seconds or so in between, but we're going to stop at the 38-minute mark, and then I'll stop the stream just for a moment, and then I'll come back again to finish the rest of it. But today we're going to be focusing on engineering and getting the rest of that done. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to be really doing what I've been talking about the last 3 or 4 episodes. We're going to be turning the warp core into a facade. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry about that. Let me get my bearings real quick. All right, we're good to go. So you can see we've got our doorways that we made in yesterday's episode. So we're going to go down now, and we're actually going to get rid of these pillars, these gray pillars that we have here. Those are going, and then the ribbing that we did along the roof, that's going to be going too. But let's go ahead and wall this off. We're getting rid of that block. We're going to be filling that in to make this a full room. We're not really needing to make too many changes right there, since we've already planned for this. Like I said, this was the main thing that held me up from getting engineering and the bridge done, because I just wasn't sure the best way to go about this. And again, you know, this was not my first choice to do this, to have the turbo lift right on the back of the warp core, but this was just kind of, you know, making lemons or lemonade out of lemons, and doing the best with what I had to work with, because it was too much. It was really impossible to have the warp core and the turbo lift encompassing the same area and not having issues. So this is kind of like the best solution I can come up with. To be honest, I'd be shocked if somebody came up with a better solution than this, other than moving the turbo lift entirely. But then the problem you're going to have with that is then it's not going to match up with the layout that it's supposed to be on the bridge. So, you know, I'm kind of like, I felt like my hands were kind of tied here. It really wasn't any choice, but that's okay. We're going to focus on building out our frame here on the sides, and then once we have that, we're going to come back again, and we're going to make our warp core ever so slightly bigger and blend it in. By the time we're done with this, you're not going to be able to tell that we facaded out the warp core. It's going to look awesome. Because one of my things too is I really want the turbo lifts connected to a main corridor. And we're going to be making an extension of the back corridor coming into this. We'll make like a hub. So basically that you can come from the inner circular corridor into this area, and then you can also go into engineering. It's going to kind of fork off where you can go basically 4 different ways, where we'll have 2 turbo lifts and then 2 exits, and then actually 1 forward exit going all the way out. Kind of confusing, I know, but we'll get into it. Right now we're just trying to get our base lined up here. You can see it's not we're not changing the layout of the front end of the warp core. We're going to leave that as is pretty much. To be honest with you, I don't think this is going to be a bad thing, because I tell you what, I was watching right before I decided to do this. I was watching a video. It was a 3D tour of the Enterprise D, and they're going through engineering, and like I noticed that like behind the warp core there was like pretty much nothing there. There was like literally just a wall behind it, and like it had like these tubes going out like at different two angles behind it, but like there really wasn't anything going on like behind the warp core, and that's why I was kind of deciding like, you know what, like I can totally get away with doing this. Like we're gonna have to kind of reshape the room a little bit, but I think it'll work out fine because when you first walk into engineering, um, the room's still going to look circular. Um, we're going to try to maintain that as much as possible, but by adding this hub in with the turbo lifts that we'll be doing in just a moment, um, it's going to kind of change the layout, at least of the front end of engineering. But with the warp core being there, that doesn't really matter, you know? All right, just double checking, making sure that I'm putting my walkway at the same point. Well, not the walkway, but the actual um, backbone where the staircase is going to go. Want to make sure they're coming up on the same side just to keep things accurate. So now we're going to get rid of these pillars. We don't need them. They're just going to be in the way now. They look cool, but they're totally going to go against with what we're going to be doing in here. This is honestly one of the reasons why I said you're not going to be able to keep them, because if you're going to be wanting to make a way into your bridge on the Cerritos, you're probably going to have to do this. Um, or you're going to run into some problems, or you're going to have to get rid of your warp core. And I really didn't want to do that, you know. Um, that was even something I considered at one point, but I was like, I can't do that. Like, I could have moved it down to the lower hull, but based off the blueprints, that just doesn't seem right. Because from what I can gather, the warp core is in the smack dab center of the saucer, at least on the Cerritos. And I'm doing the same thing on this side, just getting the stairs in the dead center of the 3 wide gray back wall. Looks a little funky right now, but we're getting there. I'm actually really excited to show off this area of the ship finally and build it out, because I finished this last weekend. I think it was. It was either last weekend or the weekend before that. That I got on to actually finish the engineering up, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. So much so that um, I made point to go in and get screenshots of the finished engineering, and previous episodes that we've already worked on engineering. I've already updated the pictures. So eagle-eyed people might have already noticed that. That was your teaser of how it was going to end up looking. Um, we need to get rid of this gray line here. That needs to actually be blue. Match our flooring here. So we don't actually have any wall corridors, at least on the walls here. We just have our floor, but we're going to be pretty much extending this back. We're going to have this corridor actually coming all the way actually into engineering now, to pretty much have it connect right into where these turbo lifts are going to go up into the bridge. By the time we're done with it, it's going to look like we did it on purpose. But this is just one of the things that you're going to end up doing when you're building ships like this from scratch. There's going to be times you're going to have to improvise and think of solutions and ways around that. And doing this facade here, I think it was honestly really clever. I don't know if other people would have necessarily thought of a solution quite like this. Definitely need to grab some cyan, or excuse me, the white terracotta, because we're going to be using that. So we're marking our entryway point to actually go into the turbo lift. And now we're going to do our arches. See, little by little, our room's starting to come together, even though we don't have that much down yet. See, from this side, you're not really going to be able to see it, which is fantastic. This is why I'm talking about the whole point of view thing. We walk into engineering from that point, which is exactly what we're using from the screenshot as a reference. It's spot on with how it's supposed to look. So that's why I said, like, we can take some liberties, because how are we to know that there's not a turbo lift behind the warp core? Because it's, at that angle. We really don't know. So definitely taking advantage of that. And now we're going to build out the rest of our walkway here. So you can see it's going to fork off into our entrances into engineering. All right, cool. Now we have our floor mapped out. So we have a loose idea of how this is going to kind of end up going. Only problem is that once we get this in, we're pretty much going to have a giant T smack dab in the front end of engineering. So we're going to have to mess with the walls around those back areas behind right where we're at now, and kind of blend it in with the wall a little bit, so it doesn't look, so it's not sticking out so much. So I think the main goal here too is to try to blend it into a point that looks like we did it on purpose, So that's going to take just a little bit of backpedaling here, but really not much. We're just taking out these pillars and this ribbing going along the roof. Wasn't a bad idea to add it, but it's just not going to work with what we're going to be doing. So we're going to keep this simple right off the pillar. We're just going to go all the way down. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're just going to go all the way down. You can always adjust it later. This way, basically this will be my first attempt of how to blend this in with the rest of the room. And what I just added there, we're going to end up adjusting that a little bit. All right, so this is a transition point to leave engineering, so we need to make sure that we continue that pattern that we have that we're doing through the rest of the ship. That one side is white concrete, then we do white terracotta, and then white again. You see, and that's plenty of room to walk around in. We're going to build out these corridors also. We're going to kind of be walling off the side, but we can always add doorways at a later point. But now, by doing this, we've connected our hallway going from the bridge. Now it connects engineering and also our main corridors, which is what I wanted to begin with. I would have preferred if this was maybe heading towards the back of the ship also, but again, this is just making lemonade out of lemons. This was the best solution I can come up with. I don't think it looks bad though. See, those aren't going to perfectly line up there, but that's okay. The reason they're not going to line up there is because of how the turbo lifts are lining up in the bridge. And this is going to be the one time that you see me veer away from going by the cut pattern. That pillar, those two pillars directly in front of us are not going to be perfect. But I think we can we can let that slide. I think it'll work out just fine. It's not gonna. I don't think it even looks weird. It looks just fine. And I believe you see stuff like that on the Enterprise D. Like there's variations in how the corridors look. And if you don't believe me, just go on YouTube yourself and just type in U.S.S. Enterprise D tour, and just click on the first one you see. More than likely, it'll probably be the same one I saw. It's like a 3D tour of the ship. But as you're going to the different decks, um, the corridors like have variations in them. They change in different areas of the ship, and that's something I've been toying with, maybe implementing a little bit more in the Cerritos. I don't know. Um, it's something I haven't added, but it's something I've still been thinking about doing because, again, there's only so much of the interior of this thing that we've seen. So that's why you're going to hear me talking about the Enterprise D a lot during this build, just because that's really the best ship to reference it to, because that's really a lot of what they base the Cerritos off of. All right, we got a little bit of light in here. We're looking good. We're gonna get rid of this line here. Do white going along the top, maybe. We don't really have enough room right here for lighting. I think we'll just stick with the white. We need to get rid of this. That ribbing going along the roof. Should have just got rid of all of it in one swing. But we're not looking too bad. No, overall though, I'm really happy with how the Cerritos engineering turned out. I think it's very unique actually, and it's getting me really excited to do the Enterprise D because it's just I'm liking that I've been able to come up with variations on my interiors of these things, and that they're not all basically just turning out the same. So I'm really trying to do that. I'm trying to stay true to this ship as much as I possibly can. And see, this is that front angle I'm talking about. The room still maintains that circular shape. Still looks great from the front. The sides are something to be desired at the moment, but we're going to blend all that in. We're going to make it look as close as we can that we meant to do this. Right now, we still have some blending to do as it is, but we're just going to close up the walls here to get a better idea of the space that we have to work with, maybe what we need to do, or try to get some ideas of what we need to do. And the best way to do that is to close off these walls and then take a step back and take a look at it. That is just dead space right now. I don't know if we'll go back to it and use that room for something. However, if you're going to end up using this game on survival, you can definitely repurpose that dead space for an extra room. But that's definitely going to happen to you. Every once in a while you're going to have little pockets of dead space on your ship. It's very hard to avoid, and I just made the decision over the course of building these ships that I basically just try to get the shape that I'm going for, and if I end up with a little bit of dead space, I end up with a little bit of dead space, and I don't let it bother me. So that's kind of where I'm at on it, and I don't think you should really concern yourself with it either, because here's the thing. Nobody's going to know that there's dead space there unless you say, hey, let me show you and delete this wall and come behind you and see there's nothing there, you know? So that's just something to take into consideration, when you're building these ships, you're in control of what you're showing. based off of what you're building. So that's something that you can definitely keep in mind when you're making these things. You don't have to sweat yourself so much to fill every single gap of the ship, because they just don't have that much of the interiors fleshed out. No ship, I don't think there's any ship that has deck to deck, room for room that's been completely mapped out, with maybe an exception of the Enterprise NX-01. Um, if you go and watch some videos, check out like the Trek Yard one that they did, but there's some other ones like look up 20 facts you didn't know about the NX-01, and that ship was actually one of the first ships that they did um, with computer rendering. And the initial source file of it, they like went in and like room for room, deck to deck, completely made a 3D model of this thing, and like all these bells and whistles and stuff that the ship could do. And long story short, like I think like maybe 5% of like all the stuff that they actually made for that ship actually made it into the show, so much that the creator of that ship was kind of irked because they just didn't utilize any of the stuff that they made. But even then, you know, they put all that time into it. And the NX-01, I think that's another ship like some of these newer ships that they've done where they do them, you know, in a computer rendering. They got to have more than one source file that they're using to do these episodes, because like when you're looking at like reference shots, like they don't always match up. They really don't. So we're not looking too bad right now. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do here with the warp core, because the only problem now is that it looks kind of small, doesn't it? I mean, that's kind of my feeling on it, is that especially after adding those white walls to it, is that it just looks so like tiny and minuscule. So like, I think one thing that we could do to try to fix that is fatten up the sides, maybe make these two wide instead of just the one, and maybe we can actually try to add in the blue ring in the front that's going on, that's actually on the CERRITOS. Because that was one thing I didn't have on here. I did it originally. I took it off because I didn't like what I came up with, but there was like this blue ring that's going around the warp core on this ship, and I just couldn't get it right in the first attempt. But I think what I end up with looks pretty good. Yeah, see, and instead of doing a circle, I'm just going to do a square pattern. Maybe try to keep it simpler instead of having it have all these crazy angles. That could work a little bit better. Maybe just cut the corners so it kind of looks like it's turning. Basically, a better second attempt of what my original thought was. What we need to do is add gray on each sides and maybe get rid of the white in the middle and replace that with gray. I don't know. But we definitely need a block underneath it to look like maybe like there's tubing or something coming out of this, or like that it's all actually like one tube, but it's got like this blue piece that's coming out of the front of it. And we can switch that to white and just have three row of three in the middle. That would work out pretty good, because then we have a little bit of differentiation between colors, and it's just not all like a big glob of gray, basically. That's kind of getting where I want it to go. We still got a little bit more time left in today's episode. We're going to be going up to about the 38-minute mark. And those are those that are with me on Twitch, I'll be stopping just for about a minute or so, and then I'll be coming back to finish up the remainder of the stream. But for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you'll have to tune in tomorrow to get the remainder of today's episode, um, which will be on the rest of engineering, and then also we're going to wrap up the bridge. That's kind of why I kind of did both of these together, because it pretty much fell hand in hand, you know, because I couldn't really get too far in the bridge until I got the turbo lift situation figured out. So I just kind of built them back to back once I figured out the order, and or at least the way in which I wanted to go about doing this. And I believe what I'm doing right now, I'm going to end up taking out. Because I wanted to get just a little bit more lighting in here, so I was going to do the sea lanterns going along the floor here, and then do like half slabs going along the floor. But I'm fairly certain that I'm going to be taking these out and just have them going in like in the corner every so often. All right, let's fix that. We got a couple more to do. We're going to bang that out, and then we're going to come back again and do a row of half slabs. Now, if this is something that you like, you could keep this in your build, and it's not going to hinder it really at all, I don't think. In the corner that we're at right now, we're going to be kind of manipulating that wall a little bit to make it blend in with the corridor. But yeah, I don't know. Something about this half slab down there, it just doesn't look right. Not in this room anyway. The only good thing about it is that very well lit now. Not that we didn't have a lot of light in here before, we did, but yeah, I don't know how I'm feeling about the half slabs going along the floor in this room. But sometimes you just gotta throw it down, see how it looks, and see if you like it or not. If I end up not wanting to use it, I'll just have to go back and take it out. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a bad thing to do this, and like I always like sometimes like I'll think of it like, oh well, you know, I'm end up having to backtrack, but I try not to think like that, because really it's when you do things like this where you start to try variations and like other ways to like go about it. I've found that 9 times out of 10 you end up coming up with a better idea than what you had originally. Usually that happens, not every time. I've had plenty of times where I made a change and I was saying like, you know, I don't like that at all, I'm just going to keep what I had. But I still think that it's well worth it to always be willing to try new things on here when you're building, because it can definitely help to get you where you're trying to go eventually with it. May not happen on the first attempt, may not happen on the second attempt. You just got to keep messing with it until you get it to where you want it to be. And that's something that's been true on the CERRITOS. You know, again, this was one of the reasons that held me up on engineering and the bridge. But I just, after I felt like I sped my tires a little bit, I walked away from it. I worked on other areas. watched a couple of videos to inspire me, and I tackled it again when I had a little bit more of an idea, at least what I wanted to do. And sometimes that's all it takes, just taking a breather from it and stepping away and coming back with a fresh set of eyes, because then I've found that a lot of times when you do that, you'll start to think of stuff that you haven't even considered before, because what's more than likely happening to you is that you're aggravating yourself trying to figure out a solution and it's not coming to you. So you're basically stopping yourself, over frustration of coming up with a viable solution. Because I'm not going to lie, I did not have this this idea originally. This was one of the more recent things that I've done on the ship. But I'm really glad this worked out this way, because this ship is just so completely unique from any ship that I've made on Minecraft so far, hands down. Um, I wouldn't say it's the best. Definitely not my worst build either, but it's definitely very unique. It's completely different than any ship I've done, both on the outside and inside. Trying to figure out if I want to get rid of those corners, those cyan ones, maybe move it back one. And I'm also getting ready to do the split. Got to adjust this here, make sure they match. Just want to make sure that we have 4 in between. So we're going to be making a couple of adjustments here just to make everything match up. Even though that is technically where the threshold to walk into engineering, we can slightly adjust it and nobody's going to be able to tell. But for the sake of having all of this match up, our corridors, I definitely feel that it's worth it. Now, before I get too far into it, you see I got to go in and add in these archways. Primarily to see if they're going to match up. Sorry about that. My cat walking across me, distracting me, which she loves to do. Yeah, no, we need to do these front ones, because if this doesn't match up, then we got to make another change. But hopefully, we're not going to have to make a change. I actually made a slight mistake right here. You can see I've got the white terracotta going through the floor. This is the only hallway that I have that. And for whatever reason, I was doing that, but yeah, that's not in the rest of the build. I might actually keep that for engineering because, again, they're these ships will have slight variations in the corridors depending on where you're at. So maybe I can get away with keeping it. I don't know. I'm gonna leave it as is and mess with it, but I have a feeling we're gonna be maybe coming back and doing like a tiny slight revision on the corridors before this tutorial is done, just to get everything on par and whatever last minute changes I want to make to it. All right, we got about 4 minutes left. We're wrapping up today's episode. And by getting rid of these corners right here, we move them back. Makes the room slightly bigger. But now everything is going to match up a little bit better now. Could even do white terracotta right there. Wouldn't look bad. 'Cause, That actually doesn't look horrible. And that's something you see on the Enterprise D. Like some of their hallways, like the walls, they're just flat, that cream color, which is kind of why I'm doing this, because this was literally right after I'd got done watching that tour, and a lot of that stuff was fresh in my mind. So I was just, kind of going off of what I saw in the video. We're slightly tweaking that now, again, to go with taking out the cuts that we made in the wall. And now we got to fill in our roof here. I'm making a point to go with the same pattern that I've done before. Do the white, and then 2 blocks, and then sea lanterns on the side. I gotta get rid of that one sea lantern right there. Let's pull that out. Bam. All right, we're in good shape now. We're gonna have to fill in the floors and walls right there, and we gotta fill in the roof behind us. That looks pretty good. These gray blocks, we don't need them. We can pull them out. And I might as well do it while I'm over here. Just finish off the last couple of pods here in the roof that need to be filled in. I messed up on that one, so I'm gonna have to get rid of those blocks on the side and swap those out for sea lanterns. All right, we are in good shape now. I'm just gonna make a cut here and here. It's gonna be a doorway for whatever these rooms are gonna end up being. Could very well end up being crew quarters. I have not decided yet, but it's either going to basically be on this side or the other side of the circular corridor, because basically I'm going to be using that circular wall to make those bunks, because the general crew quarters was going in a circle on the Cerritos, so that's why I want to take advantage of that area for that at least. You can see how I was toying with the idea of like having a railing going around, which this is something you could do on your engineering. I ultimately decided to opt out of doing railing, because when I added this in, and you back up and look at the warp core, this basically chunk of block or half slabs is blocking your view of it. And you really can't see it all that well. So I just decided that, I'm not a fan of it. We're just going to get rid of it. Just going to leave the yellow line being sufficient not to cross, and assume that everybody in the next generation is wise enough not to cross that yellow line, because they might die if they do. Don't ask me the safety parameters of going up in a turbo lift right behind it. We're just going to assume that it's safe. Let's swap this out with a block that I'm not currently using. All right, so moving on, we're just going to do a row of gray going along the cut with the yellow. And it's just to make this area going around the warp core just to look a little bit more fuller. This yellow line going around it looks kind of lonely sitting here by itself, and I think it looks a little bit better now with this gray line attached with it. this back wall here, we're going to make a couple of changes. After I finish this cut, I'm actually going to stop, and we're going to pick up again in just a moment on stream. But if you are with me on YouTube, we're going to have to stop it here and pick up again tomorrow. Anyway, that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. And if you did enjoy this video, if you could please help me out, hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. New subscribers, also don't forget to hit notifications on so you always get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my new live streams on Twitch at twitch.tv/ZeroElite. And you can always catch my streams Sundays through Thursdays, typically between 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to also follow me at youtube.com/C/ZeroElite. You can always catch my new Starship Evo builds dropping on Mondays, my Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Fridays, and those videos on YouTube drop at 10 a.m. Eastern. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.